We've seen a lot of the Blackberry KEYone over the past few months, but it's finally here. After the ambitious Blackberry Priv and the all-touch DTEC 50 and 60, the KEYone feels like a return to form for a brand that used to be a smartphone giant. The KEYone, a Blackberry that feels like a Blackberry. That's a big deal when you look at the other Android phones Blackberry and TCL has made. It's remarkably well built, and the combination of an aluminum frame with a dark, soft touch back reminds us of an old camera. It's not for everyone, but it does have a kinda classic feel. Speaking of classic, the KEYone's claim to fame is its physical keyboard, a glossy thing that's comfortingly familiar. It wasn't long before we were quickly pecking out messages. But the keyboard has more going for it than satisfying clicks. It doubles as a capacitive trackpad, so you can swipe your finger across to scroll through lists and such. It's fun, although not always useful when holding the phone vertically. More importantly, you can assign shortcuts to each of the letter keys, turning the keyboard into a launchpad. The KEYone packs a 4.5-inch Full HD screen in a 3:2 aspect ratio. That's more squat and square than other phones, which reduces the amount of information you can squeeze on the screen at one time. This might sound annoying, but in general it didn't pose a problem. Beyond that and some solid outdoor visibility, the screen isn't much to write home about. Ditto for the KEYone speakers. They get a little muddy when you crank up the volume, but that's most smartphones. The camera is a different story. This 12-megapixel shooter is the best we've ever seen on a Blackberry. It's not perfect, but it does use the same Sony-made sensor as the Google Pixels. So it's no surprise this thing takes detailed, nicely colored shots when the conditions are right. Its focus is fast too, though it does struggle with nailing the exposure sometimes. By default, the camera isn't set up to lock focus before snapping a photo either, which can lead to some blurry pictures unless you enable the feature. For the most part though, both the main camera and the 8-megapixel front camera are respectable photographic companions. We're also pretty fond of Blackberry's approach to software here. The KEYone runs Android 7.1.1 with a load of added security features and some software tweaks. If you've used earlier Android Blackberries, you won't notice much difference. Blackberry Hub is here to unify your inboxes, the Productivity tab is back to remind you what's on your to-do list, and DTEC is still a solid tool for managing app permissions and explaining the basics of mobile security. Of course, none of this would matter if the phone choked while trying to switch between apps. That's definitely not the case though. The KEYone uses Qualcomm's Snapdragon 625 chipsets with 3 gigs of RAM. That's not the most powerful bit of silicone out there, but over a week of testing, the KEYone never really felt sluggish. Performance, in other words, was always more than just good enough. The only time we noticed any hiccups was in playing graphically intense games, though they always remained playable. We squeezed quite a bit of life out of the battery too. It routinely ran for an entire day with charge to spare, and you can easily get 2 days if you're not particularly demanding. So yeah, the KEYone is an impressive little machine. In fact, it's the best Android Blackberry to date. Longtime fans have reason to be pleased, but everyone else? Well, as good as this phone turned out to be, it probably won't make anyone a convert. So if you need a physical keyboard, this is your best option. If you don't, move on. There's nothing to see here.